Good evening. Tonight we were going to discuss 10 years of Pinoy Athletics. So back in 2012, Pinoy Athletics was established during the Palarong Pambansa in Dumaguete. At that time, under myself, Coach Enzo, and Professor Ernel Abarra, Pinoy Athletics was formed. Previously, I was affiliated with Pinoy Mila since 2010, and then we branched off in 2012. I believe it was after, I think it was either the Palarong Pambansa or the Philippine National Games at that time. Pinoy Athletics have changed the landscape of Philippine athletics with an alternative set of views to the older established PATAFA system. A time of avidly supporting athletics in the Philippines with detailed analytics of grassroots and evaluation of national level performances. Some of the achievements under myself with Pinoy Athletics and Professor Ernel were the following. Um, Firstly, bringing in during my time as the assistant in the PSC to the commissioner then in charge of athletics, bringing in Eric Cray to Philippine Athletics, who went on to become a semi-finalist at the Olympics and a 5 times SEA Games champion, the Richardson twins, among many others. Secondly, Pinoy Athletics supported Tabal and Ernest John Obiena during their disputes with their association, lending moral support and other means. Um, introducing introducing fairer selection methodologies at the 2013 and 2015 SEA Games. So at that time, while I was PSC consultant, I was invited by the PATAFA president at the time to serve as consultori on the selections for these two events. And then also in 2014, come up with a list of athletes for the ASEAN School Games when it was held in Marikina, and and uh, serve on the management of the team at that time. And that was done using a scaled system where we selected all the athletes that had hit the medal standards, and then the remaining slots for which were left over because there wasn't enough athletes who hit the medal standards were given using the points table of the World Athletics, which is used to compare performances in different event scales. Um, Thirdly, Pinoy Athletics provided a higher quality of athletics news and insights than what is and was available in the Philippine mainstream newspapers. So we went into further details. A lot of our articles on our Pinoy Athletics website are evergreen articles. That means read and then go away and have a think about it and then come back and refer to the article later. Whereas it's very different to articles from, say, the Inquirer or the Malaya or the Manila Bulletin or the Star or any of those mainstream newspapers, because those articles are kind of designed to be read once and then kind of not really referred to again very often. Whereas the style of writing for my athletics website is we write articles that are read once and then referred to again and reread for um, reference material. A lot of the articles we've written have very unique information. In particular, our section on legends of track and field, which has information that can't be found really anywhere else on the net, because a lot of it was sourced using very old written materials that is extremely rare in some cases, and um, due to this, Wikipedia and several other prominent sites and even newspapers, when they remember, um, frequently citate PinoyAthletics information as a premier source of information when it comes to Philippine athletics. So the other things that we were able to do and achieve during our 10 years included more recently organizing events. We branched out into private event management, and we were able to organize 15 virtual events during the pandemic, partnering with Philippine local clothing brand, Masiv Sports, who helped sponsor our events by providing singlets for winners. And we had around 15 smaller face-to-face events between 2020 and 2022. More recently, one of these events that we partnered with was the National Presa. So Presa is one of the oldest track leagues in the sports leagues in the Philippines. It was established in 1953 and comprises several nationwide private schools. So we were able to, Presa had been out of business since 2019. There was no Presa in 2020. There was no Presa in 2021. But in 2022, we partnered with the National Presa Committee to host the National Presa virtual event in 2022. We've also partnered with various groups, including coaches, grassroots coaches around the country, and Virgin Milagrosa, which is a university foundation, which is a Presa college, by providing them training programs and feedback in regards to running form and that sort of thing. So we've been very successful, in particular with our men's sprint team. They're one of the best sprint teams in the collegiate in the country right now, especially during the pandemic when not a hell of a lot's happening at this point. Also, during my stint, I partnered with the Zamboanga del Sur Sports Academy from 2015 to 2017, coaching grassroots level athletes, particularly in the sprints, during that time period. And a lot of those athletes went on to UAAP and NCAA schools. I think for my program, there's still athletes coming out of that program who are, getting into colleges around the country. So it was great to be part of a program that, allowed these kids, a lot of them from poorer backgrounds, to, be able to get scholarships at schools and colleges. So that was positive that came out of my 2 years working with the Zamboanga del Sur Sports Academy. The youngest athlete on that program now, the last one on my now extinct Zamboanga program, is now also finding her way to a bigger school. And that's something that I'm extremely filled with in terms of investment of my time, to know that so many young athletes, because of some time I put aside, have now made a better future from their involvement in athletics, not just in athletics but also academically. They're now able to go into colleges and schools and complete their journey that way. So I was just extremely grateful to have been part of that journey. And finally, when we talk about events, it's important not to leave out the contributions of Airnel Abarra and Ateneo Blue Knights and Ateneo Sports Director Noli Io for their contributions. We had a Mindanao track league that was running for 6 seasons, and it was the only established track league in Mindanao. It was overseen by Professor Ernel Abarra, and and supported by sports director Noliaio. It ran for 6 seasons, and the event actually spread out into other parts of Mindanao when it was in operation. It was in Davao. Then it moved up to Tagum. They had leagues in Cotabato, and then they had a league in Tubod in Ladao. So in the following seasons, after Airnel had gone overseas and the Mindanao Track League was no longer in operation, Pinoy Athletics also continued a tradition of supporting athletics in Mindanao. We had a Sprintopia virtual event in Cagayan de Oro, followed by 3 legs of the Mindanao Track League set up in Butuan and Caraga in the northeastern part of Mindanao. Okay, so I just want to go through. I was on the bus today and I was going through, I've got a list here. These are some things, you know, I was discussing this with various members of the public, and I've been deep in thought about, you know, in discussion with others about what, you know, some things that need to be done for Philippine athletics. Before, you know, I was in a position of power with the PSC as the assistant to the commissioner in charge of athletics, Jolly Gomez. So these are some things that I've written down, and I'm just going to go through them briefly. I do believe, before I start, that I do have the connections and the know-how to actually pull these off. So I'm going to share these. The reason I'm sharing these is that, you know, I was with Philippine Sports Commission as the assistant to the commissioner in charge of athletics and held various other posts in Philippine sports, but as of now, not really in any position of power except for my influence over the Pinoy Athletics group and my other connections. But anyway, I felt that since PATAFA now has a new president with Terry Capistrano, I will briefly go over these. I'm not going to give away so much detail that, you know, that I make it really easy for them to just, you know, do it themselves, because as I said, I believe that I have the connections and the know-how to pull off most of these. If, you know, I'm in the right place to be able to execute and orchestrate these particular things. So I'm going to go through the things that I believe that Philippine track and field should improve and really needs to work on. No particular order, because after talking to various experts and fans and enthusiasts in Philippine track and field, a lot of them feel that certain things on this list are more important than other things, but I will go through the things that I believe need to be done. And I've discussed this on my group, so we've gone through these. Okay, so number 1, synchronization of the calendar for Philippine athletics. The thing is that most countries in the world, including Malaysia recently, certainly Australia and New Zealand, and especially the United States and Europe, even Thailand and even our local neighbours, most of them, they have their athletic calendar of events planned out about a year in advance. Now, that might be a bit more difficult because of the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, the Philippine Track and Field Association was just like, we'll just have competitions as we go, as we feel like. We'll move them around as much as possible. And, you know, it was just there was no structure and no, and it was, that makes it extremely difficult for coaches, because imagine there's an event and then it gets moved somewhere else, or it gets, they get shuffled around. It's going to be very hard for you as a coach to plot your peaks and periodizations with programs being shunted around everywhere. So the first thing is the synchronization of the calendar. So what that means is the year before the competitions, or 6 months before, plan out the events, put the events in certain places, and do not move them around unless it's absolutely necessary. But you need to basically establish a calendar like fixed about a year in advance, 6 months at the 6 months at the most. So that was the first thing, is synchronization of the calendar. I'll get back to that in a minute, because right now there's a lot of road races and that sort of thing, and they're just held, like, by private organisers, and they're just held all over the place. So it's very hard to get the information of when events are. So some events just go under the radar. I'll add more to this list, but number 2 is regionalisation of events. So regionalisation, especially during the pandemic, the need has been seen to regionalise the system. So events, like, you have more events available. I mean, a lot of the time, if you're having events in Manila, that's great if you're from Manila, but if you're from the other regions, it doesn't really leave you a lot to really do in your own province or backyard. So having more events in the regions is very important. Number 3, I believe that the walk events need to be given better attention. The walk event has been neglected by PATAFA for the last decade at least. There's a very good walk coach through Saturnino Salazar, who's conducting his passing Grassroots program, who would be of great assistance to the national program. What I was told when I further investigated, because they decided they were not going to have, the DepEd decided they were not going to have walks events at the ASEAN School Games, and I was asking somebody, why is that? Why do we not have walk events? Why do we not have walk events at anywhere? There have been no walk events at any event except for 2 events that Pinoy Athletics put on, in the last 2 years. The PATAFA have not held a single walk event since the pandemic started, and even the DepEd has not held any walk events, and there's no walk events at the ASEAN School Games. There is going to be a walk-a-thon event at the Southeast Asian Youth Games in October, but the walkers don't even really get that many events. And I'm just going to go later about how that can be easily implemented by having walk events at road events, if that was the problem. But it came to me through discussion that wasn't the problem. What was the problem in the walks is that we don't have enough qualified walkathon coaches to actually hold the walkathon events. So you need 3. If Salazar is 1, then you need 2 more. And my question was, why has Philippine Track and Field not trained more walkathon coaches to address this? Is the option just to forget and just leave out the walks events rather than attempt to train more walk judge coaches so this event can be held? I mean, isn't walks part of the 48 or 50 events of athletics, on the program? Shouldn't it not be taken seriously? Then the next thing that needs to be addressed is, again, with the situation of Obiena, is the payroll system, where the funds going to shouldn't really be going directly through an athlete, but through the PSC should be channeling that directly to the people that need to be paid, not through an athlete for an athlete to manage. But that's been talked at of great lengths, and it's been mediated on and settled. So hopefully part of that mediation that the PSC had was to ensure that an athlete's not put in a position where they have to manage the funds of their coach and that sort of thing. Number 5, coaching accreditation and coaching system. All right, so I'm not going to touch too much base into this, but yeah, this is something that needs to be addressed as the coaching teaching system. Currently, they're using the World Athletics System. They've trained up 500 new coaches. The question is, how many of these new coaches are actually active? There is a better system, which I can go into further detail on in one of these next podcasts. That also needs to be addressed. Then I'm just going to skip and come back to some points, but then, for example, the next one is road events. So with road events, this could be Philippine Track and Field could be revenue sourcing this a lot better. Like there are other things that can be added which haven't been thought of, like adding race walks, road relays, cross-country events, and for the younger athletes, some road sprint events in order to maximize participation in road events, which are also part of track and field and also should be addressed. It's also a way to be monetized, and also revenue through TV rights for competitions can also be a source of income for the association. And looking at the other points that need to be addressed is, as I said earlier, one of the things that PinoyAthletics has been doing, and we worked with Ayala Corp as consultants at one point, was evaluation of national level performances. And after this last Southeast Asian Games, I believe that really some events really need to be looked at in terms of where they're going, in terms of the trends, in terms of the progression of athletes in those events. I'll go into that into further detail, but for example, the men's 400 and 4x4, that definitely needs to be looked at very carefully after the SEA Games. I mean, it was the first time in 30 years where we had participated where we didn't even get top three in the men's 4x4. That really needs to be revamped and evaluated. There are other events as well. I don't want to just pick on that one, but there are other events which, need to be really looked at in terms of, for example, even women's middle distance 815, no representative, and prior to that, well off a medal when we did have a representative. So women's middle, anything, anything over 8, really, for women up to about 8 or 15, really. That needs to be really looked at as well. So anyway, that's all for now. I just thought I'd share with you my points for better improvement of the sport. So again, we look at 10 years of establishment of PinoyAthletics and our service to the Philippine athletic community. And thanks, everybody. Have a pleasant evening.